them even stoned and beaten. And so you can find that if in Galatians chapter 1, he shares his story there, how he found the gospel and how he persecuted the church of God. So I want to encourage you all to read that first chapter there. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is because, this reminds me a lot of autoimmune diseases. Because why is it that the body ends up turning against itself? It seems to be a little bit of a paradox, because the body's designed to take care of itself. It's designed to protect itself. And yet we see, like the Apostle Paul, that he went from place to place persecuting the church of God and basically killing those who disagreed with him and became Christians. That was contrary to his belief. And so we see the Apostle Paul is an illustration of what happens in the body when we have immune problems. The white blood cells, like they're the um, they're the ambassadors, or protectors of the body. They're the sentinels. They're the watchmen that are looking on the walls of Zion, and they are to identify that which is harmful to the body, so that they can set up a situation where they can take it out in a very quick and precise manner. But just like the church, so too is the body, and we can end up losing the ability in the white blood cells can lose the ability to basically identify that which is lawful and that which is part of the body, and they can be zealous, very zealous in the wrong direction. So, so we need to look at what makes them become, uh, you know, a rebel, like Saul was. What causes them to turn on the body's own cells? So I'm going to share with you my screen here, if you can just bear with me. All right. Okay, I hope you can see this. All right. If you can give me the thumbs up, if you can see this okay. The title is When Self is the Enemy, Autoimmune Inflammatory Diseases. So, why is it that we have so many autoimmune diseases today? And was this God's plan in the beginning? Of course not. We're told, I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, that my soul knoweth right well. And boy, this is just a short list of all the autoimmune diseases that people are suffering from today. I'm not going to be covering the majority of these. I'm going to be looking at the triggers that can lead to many of these from happening. And so we are definitely seeing a tremendous increase in autoimmune diseases. In fact, it's getting harder and harder to find people that don't have some type of autoimmune disease in their body, especially during the latter years, and it is even affecting children in a very significant way. And so we're going to go through the laws of health as well. All right, I'm not, because we're not just focusing on herbs. We will actually talk a little bit about that, but the laws of health are vital in understanding how these things can be contributed to. When one of the problems that we see in our modern day civilization is 75% of individuals are in a sedentary job, and this is like having a car idle, and it builds up like a car building up fumes and smoke, and in the body it builds up inflammation. All right, so I want you to understand something. At the foundation of all autoimmune disease, we have inflammation. And inflammation is the precursor for these things developing. And the inflammatory particles will actually cause a change in the signaling between the local tissue and the immune cells. And so it's like sending someone a text message and you send the wrong text message to the wrong person. And they end up getting a message contrary to what should have been received. And they start to look at other cells in a different way than they should. And so we have these cell communications called interleukins that basically are like little text messages that are sent through the bloodstream that actually can targeting white blood cells. And those white blood cells, if they pick up the wrong message, if they see that a cell in the body is a threat, then they'll go after it, even if it is a natural part of the body. And just having a lot of sedentary, lifestyle where we're just sitting down a lot, this contributes to these autoimmune diseases. And we're told perfect health does depend on perfect circulation. So how the body heals is always the same. It's always through the blood. The life is in the blood. So anything that will inhibit circulation of the blood supply is going to contribute to autoimmune disease, and it's going to make it harder for the body to heal itself. So inflammation increases when the blood flow is congested and slowed, and as a result of this, autoimmune diseases are more likely to transpire. All right, so another thing that a lot of people suffer from is overworking their brain. Okay, and this also can be due to just being on the computer too long, or being on one's phone, or it doesn't have to be actually severe stress on the brain as far as trying to problem solve, but it could be just you're spending too much time processing information. And the eyes take up a lot of nervous energy. In fact, 20% of the energy that the body uses is directly connected to the eyes. And so when we're in front of computer screens and we've got all this glare and these missions coming to us, it does drain the body very significantly for a long period of time. So when you're at a desk sitting in front of a computer screen, the longer you're sitting in front of a computer, the more inflammation you're going to have in the body. And this will translate to the wrong messages being sent through the body. It will affect blood supply, and of course, it affects weight. And you have more visceral fat that's developed. And so the larger you are, the more your body is going to overheat because you have more fat. The more fat we have, the more the body temperature is raised. It may only be 1 degree, but it is significant. And I gave a talk not so long ago on fatty liver, showing that over 100 million American adults have fatty liver. And when the liver is compromised, then it is harder for the immune system to do its job properly, and you have a higher increase in autoimmune diseases. So just keeping your natural body weight is going to be key in helping recover this from this situation. Also, our body's natural clocks. We have what we call circadian rhythms. And so, the Bible says there's a time to and a purpose for everything under heaven. There's a time to sleep and to eat and to exercise and to rest. And so when these natural body clocks get put out of rhythm, and when we're eating at different hours of the day, sleeping at different times of the day, and exercising and just not taking care of regularity, this also affects body rhythms and sets us up for more autoimmune inflammatory diseases. So Sleep loss has also been associated with increased autoimmune diseases. And of course, stress drives this, and we're seeing a lot of people, a lot of people. I think most of the people I talk to, I say probably over 90% of the people I have consultations with on a regular basis have significant amounts of stress, and this will cause the adrenals to keep pumping out cortisol, which will cause the sugar to be released. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid which regulates sugar. It's involved in controlling sugar and releasing sugar. And so when this is high, you get more inflammation. So stress drives that, and that leads to more autoimmune diseases. Okay, so having major stressful life events within the last 2 years also increases autoimmune diseases. Food plays a significant role in autoimmune diseases, and if you're living under the golden arches every day, then you need to really address this, because oxidative stress is a real thing, and it's causing a lot of inflammatory chemicals to be released. Fried foods, all right, a lot of oxidative stress. Fried, you know, deep fried, especially deep fried foods, contributing largely to this problem. And this is causing a lot of inflammation, and it's causing what we call free radical damage. It's affecting the blood flow. It's affecting the immune cells. There's certain even condiments and spices that can cause issues as well. Now, not all spices are created equal, and maybe another time I'll sort of talk more about this, but just be aware that there are certain condiments and spices that are inflammatory in nature, even though they may be deemed anti-inflammatory. Some of them have a pro-inflammatory effect upon the body. It's very, very interesting. Yeah, so like, for example, pepper, like black pepper, for example. Black pepper is considered very, very good anti-inflammatory. And you would think, well, taking that should help my inflammation, but it actually causes inflammation in the stomach. Okay, so don't think everything that is anti-inflammatory is necessarily something that we should eat. So we understand these things by the effects that they have on the body as well. So something's irritating, something's causing gastric reaction, then just be aware of that. Also salt, all right. It depends on the salt. We use Himalayan salt or rock salt, and the regular type of salt, the sodium chloride, is very destructive, and it's very inflammatory. In fact, it hardens the arteries in the brain. So just be aware about that. And we're getting probably about 4 to 10 times the amount of sodium that our body needs. So just be careful on the salt. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." He didn't say salt of the ocean. Have you noticed that? Okay. So, salt of the earth. So that's where they used to get their salt from. And unfortunately, the oceans are very full of chemicals nowadays that make them a lot more unhealthier to get the salt from. Caffeine is another one that can accelerate inflammation. It can actually put microscopic holes in the DNA. It can cause bladder cancer. It can cause fibrous cysts. It can cause adrenal fatigue. It can also cause problems with sleep, insomnia, and it can also lead to just having someone very jittery and nervous. And so caffeine is something you definitely want to stay away from. So too is alcohol consumption, a lot of free radical damage that can be contributed. And of course, smoking, which is the number one lifestyle bad choice that people make that contributes to cancer. Yes, and even secondhand, third-hand smoke can also elevate one's risk of autoimmune diseases. I remember when I was a boy, my father used to smoke, and I ended up with nearly dying from asthma, and it just set me up so my lungs were weaker, and I had asthma the rest of my life. But thankfully, I don't get it so much now. So things can change, even if you have a tendency to certain conditions. It doesn't mean that they're not something that can be helped through natural methods of healing. What about mold? Mold is a big one. Now, this is very common, especially in. I've seen a lot of people who are completely plant-based, have a very healthy lifestyle. They're doing everything by the book, and they still have autoimmune diseases. And a lot of the reason why is because of the mold. Now, 1 in 4 homes in the United States have mold in them. And black mold is one of the worst molds you can have. And, um, when you're exposed to it for a longer period of time, those little, spores, they end up getting lodged into the lungs, and they can actually have a dramatic impact upon the immune cells. And um, of course, they have other complications attached to them, such as breathing and mucus forming, and can affect the cilia, these little hairs in the lung that actually move waste up through the lungs. So, but they also can get into the blood, and they can cause joint issues. And so we have much higher problems, risk associated with autoimmune diseases in the joints. So mold can definitely cause arthritis. Okay, so just be aware about that. Um, there are some natural remedies. Of course, you want to get rid of the mold. That's imperative. We just a few months ago, we didn't realize we had a water leak in our bedroom, just a few feet away from where I'm actually speaking, and we had some black mold right behind the panel where we were sleeping, and so we had to take that out and dry out the carpet and rip it up and do all those things. So you have to get rid of the mold, all right? And there are mold detectors that you can purchase to find mold in your house, and you really want to do a good job of cleaning that because it can come back. If you've got moisture in the panels of your house, if you've got some roof leak somewhere, or you've got maybe even a basement that doesn't get much circulation, mold can build up in the basement that goes through the vents. It goes into the circulation through the AC unit, and it can end up affecting you. So just be aware about this. How you can get rid of it, just if it's in your lungs, that is, I would highly recommend using olive oregano and lungwort. Olive oregano and lungwort are two of the best ones I know when it comes to helping with mold. You can also use saunas, and you can make sure your vitamin D levels up, your vitamin C, and you can use mullein as well as a tea, and just make sure that you get plenty of fresh air and exercise and sunlight. Aflatoxins also in a lot of fermented foods, and this is a source of inflammation and can also lead to cancer in certain situations. So they're in cheese and wine and vinegar. A lot of people ask me, is vinegar good? I grew up on vinegar. I used to have um, just pints of it. I'm surprised I haven't pickled my stomach. But anyway, vinegar is usually from decayed or rotten apples, and then they added acetic bacteria becomes acetic acid, and it's very harsh on the digestive system. And regardless of all the virtues that are promoted out there, I would um, highly recommend you stay away from vinegar because it is very poisonous in nature. So anything that's fermented or rotten, think about it. Fermentation is a breaking down process, right? It's taking something that was good and it's basically spoiling it. And so it's decaying. And God doesn't want us to eat decayed food, okay? So just be aware that vinegar is very corrosive, it's very acidic, it will interfere with gastric digestion. Um, yes, it does have some benefits, but the negatives outweigh the benefits. All right, so just be aware of some of these vinegar-rich foods. And snacks, of course, any processed food. And of course, the more it's processed, the more it's stripped of its nutrients, the more inflammation it's going to cause. So one of the worst things that is in almost everything in a packet is high fructose corn syrup. And there's so many health educators you see online, and they'll say, it's no different than what you find in a fruit or something like that, or honey. Sugar is sugar is sugar, they'll tell you. It's not. It's very different because it may be chemically the same, but how it's metabolized is very different. So high fructose corn syrup, which they get from dent corn, actually, if you look at the uh, the introduction of this back in the early 70s, is when we started really seeing diabetes start to take off, obesity start to take off, and also autoimmune diseases. And high fructose corn syrup basically it's in a free form, and that's the problem, because when you take fructose in through, say, fruit or something that's naturally good for us, it is bound to the fiber, and it doesn't actually release in the bloodstream high amounts. The liver can only metabolize about 25 grams at a time, and this leads to hyperlipidemia. It leads to thickening the blood. It leads to suppression of immunity, autoimmune diseases. So just be aware. And this is in pretty much, I'd say probably close to 80% of all processed packaged foods has some type of fructose. It may come under a different name. There's about 20 different names they use, but they do their best to try to hide it. But I think God is is trying to get his people to subsist more of natural foods, especially foods that we can grow, things like fruits and vegetables. And so a diet that's high in fiber, refined carbohydrates, right? This is one of the prime causes for autoimmune diseases because it's so inflammatory. All right, and I'm not talking about all carbohydrates here. I'm talking about refined processed carbohydrates and things like white bread, white sugar, white flour, things like that. And of course, the more you have, the more inflammation you're going to have. And 16 teaspoons of sugar will increase the body's oxidative stress and inflammation by 240%. You may think, I'm not eating 16 teaspoons of sugar a day. Well, 16 teaspoons of sugar is about 50 grams. Do you know the average American is consuming about 1,500 grams of sugar a week? 1,500 grams of sugar a week. So that's much, much more than 16 teaspoons of sugar a day. So and how we're doing that is in processed food. That's the main way we're doing that. Okay, mineral depletion, things like magnesium. The amount of magnesium in foods has decreased by 19% in the last 50 years. We have low levels of zinc, selenium, magnesium, also iodine. Well, and is someone asking a question? No? Okay. All right, so whole wheat flour has 530% more magnesium. Now, here's the thing. I just want to mention this, that the 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 flour that we're getting, like the wheat that we're getting today, even if it says whole wheat, isn't necessarily good for us because of how it is grown, and they're genetically modified a lot of the wheat. They've affected two of the chromosomes. They've also increased the gliadin content, which is a gluten. It's the protein component of gluten, and that has caused the little villi to open up in the small intestines and allow undigested food particles in and causing autoimmune reactions. And if you give a child, an infant, uh, food when they're not ready for it, and they haven't got the teeth to break that down, you're setting them up for autoimmune diseases. So just something to be aware of if you've got a young child trying to breastfeed as long as you can. Especially be careful of wheat products at a young age. This can uh, be more problematic than helpful. Okay, fiber and magnesium deficiency are associated with a 300 to 400% elevation in inflammation. Now, why this is important is because the average American has about 10% of the fiber that they need on a regular basis, and this is a common cause of constipation. Fiber is not just a broom. It is helpful for nutrient absorption. It's helpful for waste elimination. It binds to toxins. It lowers cholesterol. It also is involved with helping the microbiome, the intestinal flora, to be in a good state of health. And it is very, very important for digestion. So don't feel fiber is just an optional extra. It's very, very necessary. And magnesium is also necessary. You find this in green leafy vegetables. Also, it's very high in certain grains. So we're encouraged to get grains. Just try to add, if at all possible. I know our budgets vary, and we're all in different situations, but um, if at all possible, try to get organic. If you can't get organic, um, stay away from wheat in particular. That's my recommendation. All right, so the more sugar you have, more cholesterol, eggs, animal fats, soft drinks, and even vegetable fats. They're on the lower end, but these are primary triggers to setting oneself up for autoimmune diseases, right? So sugar is in virtually everything. Um, it's in jams, it's in pastries, it's in baked goods, it's in soft drinks, it's everywhere. So if you're going to use sugar, use something, say from honey, or even coconut sugar would be better than standard sugar you find in store. And cholesterol is, it's not so much that how can I say it? It's not so much that cholesterol is bad of itself, it's just the amount, right? So you don't need to eat cholesterol. Your body will produce cholesterol. And there is too much um, demonization of cholesterol, because it used to be people didn't worry about it. If you are 250, 300 cholesterol, it was no problem. But the drug companies found that if they lowered the cholesterol levels, so it appeared like you were higher than normal, then they could sell more medications. And now it's down to even some doctors are recommending people take statins for cholesterol levels of 150. It's just madness. So don't worry so much about cholesterol unless you're eating large amounts of cholesterol. And even vegans can sometimes have high cholesterol levels, and that's due to primarily eating, having large amounts of stress and large amounts of refined sugars, because sugar can get converted to cholesterol as well. So be careful of your oils as well, because the oils are so refined now. Okay, so they treat them at very, very high temperatures. They take a lot of their natural fatty acids out, and they select certain fatty acids like omega-6s, for example. We have too many omega-6s in our diet already, and we don't have enough omega-3s. So just make sure that you know where your oil comes from, all right? And it's better to get the oil from the food itself than buy the oil. We do buy some oil. We buy some coconut oil. We buy some olive oil. Not all olive oil that's sold is olive oil, just keep in mind. If it's real olive oil, it will be slightly green. There'll be some sediment in there at the bottom, and you won't get that rancid taste as well. So be careful of fried foods, especially trans fats, ice creams, milk, dairy product is a huge one when it comes to autoimmune disease, especially for the lungs. Okay, the lungs, very mucus forming, and of course, you want to stay away from um, meats, especially red meats. Gluten, gluten is a very big problem today. So patients with autoimmune inflammatory diseases have a high incidence of sensitivity to wheat gluten, as high as 10 times higher than normal individuals. So not everyone has a gluten sensitivity, but many people do. So if you're having bloating, gas, indigestion after you take some wheat products, then maybe you have a sensitivity to gluten. And of course, the more meat you consume, the more prevalence of rheumatoid arthritis because of the arachidonic acid in meat can translate over to what we call prostaglandins, which can translate over to things like thromboxane A2, which is a vasoconstrictor and can cause autoimmune diseases. So if you have, any animal products and you've got especially arthritis and a lot of pain, yeah, try to look at substituting those, other things, other plant proteins for that. And some people go to analogs. I'm not a real big fan of analogs, to be honest with you. I think there is a place for people that are trying to get off meat and they really can't do away with the taste. But that's not where you want to finish. Okay. A lot of these meat analogs are full of chemicals and sugar and food additives and high amounts of protein isolates and it can be quite damaging. So just you don't want to jump from the frying pan into the fire. So watch out for meats, red meats in particular, very dangerous to inflammation in the body. And then we have food poisoning. I was amazed how many people get food poisoning every year. It's phenomenal. Um, Hundreds of thousands of people can end up dying from food poisoning. So just be aware of that. If you go to a restaurant, it's pretty dangerous sometimes. So you really need to trust who you're going to, but it's getting harder and harder. I just recommend you, if in doubt, leave it out. Go take a packed lunch or something. Uh, okay, there are worms as well. If you're around animals, you have animals in your home, especially cats and dogs. I don't want to tell you too many horror stories, but animals can transmit diseases, okay? And they can transmit parasitic um, infections, and they have a lot of worms, and these worms can end up in their saliva or their feces, and clean up their mess, or you know, um, even just have them lick your face or something, and those worms can find another home. So just be aware if you do have some worms, and often people don't even know they have them. Sometimes you have an itch under your nose. All right, I'm not saying everyone who scratches their nose has worms. Sometimes it's in the anus area as well, especially at night, because that's often when they come out. And Also, you may have problems with, your stool. It's not as bulky and well formed. You may have also trouble putting on weight. This can sometimes happen. There's a lot of parasites that use up our nutrition, and then they can stay with us for years, especially things like the tapeworms. They can stretch many, many meters in length and just eat a lot of vitamins. And so be aware about that. And then we have food additives. All right, and yes, be careful if you can't pronounce it. If you got letters that indicating certain color agents, and just yeah, just avoid those things because chances are they're very inflammatory in nature. And even things like with baking soda, baking powder can cause inflammation because they lower stomach acid, and this increases your risk of infection and inflammation. All right, and of course, overeating, and we come to that time of year soon where we'll have Thanksgiving. I can believe that the average American eats 3,500 calories in an average Thanksgiving meal. So that's a phenomenal. But excessive eating causes autoimmune diseases as well. Heavy metals is another cause of autoimmune, and I would say most people listening to this presentation have a higher than normal amount of heavy metals. And when I say higher than normal, I mean higher than what is considered to be acceptable in the body. Not to say it's you're higher than other people, but we tend to have much more cadmium in our body, lead, mercury, and aluminum than we did in the previous generation. And this is because there's so many heavy metals that we're exposed to today that we weren't, we didn't have in our environment or in our food, many years ago. So just be aware of that. We can't completely eliminate those things, but we can mitigate them. If you do have heavy metals, you may want to look at getting some cilantro or some chlorella to help take those out. Mercury is one of the most damaging, so is aluminum. Very highly inflammatory and extremely toxic to the immune system. And, I know this is a hot topic and people don't, it's very divisive now, but I don't want to dwell too much on this, but I think I'm presenting to an audience that already probably has understanding that a lot of the immunization that is occurring today is pro-inflammatory and leads to a lot of autoimmune diseases. I can tell you personally from talking to many, many people who have autoimmune diseases. Often it occurs after they've had immunization. And sometimes I'm not even asking them. They're just, telling me that we had this vaccine and then all of a sudden little Johnny ended up having seizures or, having headaches or whatever. And so, just be aware. I'm not saying they're all going to be of the same caliber, and I'm not saying they're going to all lead to autoimmune diseases, but there definitely is strong indicators that this is happening. All right, and a lot of the information isn't getting to the general public because this is a common practice that often sets people up for autoimmune diseases and many other diseases later in life. And it's very big business. Unfortunately, we're in a very wicked world today, and a lot of people posing as saviors are really causing much evil in the world. Yes, read what the Bible says about Big Pharma, especially in Revelation 18. You'll find it under sorceries. Anyway, chemicals. Yes, environmental chemicals. There is 100,000 chemicals that in our environment that we're exposed to on a regular basis. And a lot of the hair products, a lot of the dyes that we put on our skin, the cosmetics, the shampoos, the lotions, the deodorants, they're very high in these chemicals. I remember one time I was quite a bit younger than I am now, but I started getting some gray hairs, and I thought, I didn't fancy this because I wasn't married at the time, and I thought, maybe I should dye my hair. No one would notice. And so I went to the supermarket and I saw this hair dye. And when I opened it, well, actually, no, I didn't actually open it, but I read on the instructions, the inside there was a set of gloves, and then there was another set of gloves to put those gloves in. So you had to wear two sets of gloves to put this dye on your hair. Um, and a lot of ladies in particular, they are more susceptible because they have more pores in the top of their scalp, on the top of their head. They have more pores to allow toxins in their bodies than men. And so this means that a lot of the dyes, in fact, a lot of the skincare products, a lot of the things that you put topically in the cosmetics, they are either nervous disruptors or endocrine disruptors. So they'll either affect the nervous system or the endocrine system. And so this can cause reactions, right? This could lead to autoimmune diseases. So be careful about that. Sodium sulfate, which is a foaming agent, they also put in shampoo, is high on the list there. Um, okay, about chest pain. Should you be worried? Inflammation not only affects bones, connective tissue, and joints, but heart muscle as well. So yes, so if you have high levels of inflammation, then it can in turn affect the heart, and that can affect the valves even of the heart. Osteoporosis, another autoimmune disease. Oops, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead there. Very much connected with inflammation. All right, so if you want to help osteoporosis, just reduce the inflammation, increase exercise, resistant exercises. Okay, strength resistant exercises. And then also, sometimes it's hormonal, sometimes it's due to the thyroid or the parathyroid glands. Sometimes it's because of diet, sometimes it's because of stress, and these are major components. It's not because we don't get enough calcium, it's because we're losing too much calcium through our lifestyle. So we need to exercise, of course, all the laws of health help us with reducing inflammation. Um, most people now are vitamin D deficient, so doctors aren't worried if someone is less than 30 anymore, if they're in their 20s. I worry about this because when you're down, when you get as low as even, well, it may be considered normal, 40, 45, that's at the turning point where your parathyroid glands get affected, and that affects the calcium um, regulation. And so if you're under 45, you're going to have a trouble regulating calcium. And so if you've got osteoporosis, you need to be especially guarded about this. So try to get above 16. All right, sorry, I'm going to skip some of this because of time. What is the time here? All right, it's nearly 5 o'clock. So having a schedule is important. Having regular periods of rest, trying to get 7 to 8 hours sleep a night is very helpful. Some people can manage, 5% of people manage and thrive, and even in good health on 6 hours sleep a night or less. But for most of us, we need 7 to 8 hours of sleep to get the best effects. So the less sleep we have, the more immune diseases we have, and the more problems regulating the immune system. So eating foods high in antioxidants is key. All right, it's key. So let me just cover briefly because I know we're running out of time here. But let me just come off the slides here. Let me just escape. All right, I'm just gonna come back to the screen here. So as you've seen, the laws of health are significant when it comes to autoimmune diseases. Okay, but let me give you a few simple herbs that can help also with the autoimmune diseases. Okay, so first of all, you need anti-inflammatories. So as was mentioned earlier, for those who were at the Q&A, you want to get things like turmeric root. Okay, so turmeric root is one of the best ways to reduce inflammation. You don't have to take it with black pepper. You could take it as a juice or a tea, or you put it in your smoothie or take an extract. Those are the best ways to get it in your body. Extracts and teas, they go straight in the bloodstream, doesn't require digestion. Okay. Another excellent herb for autoimmune is ginger. Ginger, because it's a diaphoretic herb, it's a circulatory herb, it makes you sweat, it's anti-inflammatory. It also has curcumin, as does turmeric, and it's a cousin to turmeric, and it's very, very effective for helping autoimmune diseases. Okay. Now, for stress-induced autoimmune diseases, which we see a lot of, especially hypothyroidism, I recommend things that help with the adrenals. So usually the adrenals go first, okay? They're the first ones to go. Then they pull down the thyroid gland. Now this takes years to happen, all right? It's not overnight. And then when the thyroid goes down, then you have a time regulating metabolism and weight and hormones. And so the adrenals go, thyroid goes, weight goes on actually most of the time. Hormones go out, you know, appetite is affected, sleep is affected, hubby's affected, everything just goes. It's a domino effect, okay? So using adaptogens, things like rhodiola, ashwagandha, eleuthero root, ginseng root, they're excellent for regulating cortisol. And cortisol is that it's a friend or a foe. Okay, every chemical the body makes, um, it needs to be balanced, and um, hormones can be healthy and very good for us, and they work marvelously if in the right amount. But if they are in excess, can create big problems. Okay, so cortisol is the same. If you have too much cortisol, you're gonna have a problem, and you're gonna have a problem with your immune system. Yes, this is one of the major causes for autoimmune is high levels of cortisol. So to help bring that down, you can use adaptogens. Okay, so adaptogens are herbs that help mitigate the stress response, and they help balance cortisol levels. All right, so you want to use some of those herbs, as I mentioned, ashwagandha, rhodiola, eleuthero root, ginseng are some of the best ones for that. All right, another thing you want to do is make sure that you're, as I mentioned before, you have habits. Okay, regularity is key with immune diseases because it affects the synchronization of hormones. All right, and this affects your sleep. It affects your ability for your brain to switch on at the right time. You could end up getting energy at night instead of in the morning when you need it, and you can have a flip of the cortisol, which often happens with people who are night owls and people who work late and people that basically on stimulants or high stress. This often happens to them. So you want to get your cortisol kicking in more in the morning than at night because that will affect your sleep and affect your brain and affects everything. All right, so those are a few biggies, and I want to leave some time for some questions. Um, so yeah, so maybe could we open up for some Q&A?
Yes, we will open up the floor now for questions. You could either raise your virtual hands, or if you don't want to speak, you could put your question in the chat. And I see Mdu, you already have your hand raised. Please unmute and ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Dr. Wellard for the great presentation. I'm happy to listen to you. It's late at night here in South Africa. I enjoyed your videos when I was doing the online course with Wildwood last year. So I'm happy to be speaking to you tonight. Actually, it's just 3 questions, Doctor. Number one is that is sour milk. I don't know whether you understand sour milk. We call it mass here. Sour milk and canola oil, are those good for health? That's number one.
Okay.
Number two.
Can you repeat that? I heard canola oil, but I couldn't get the other one.
Yeah, sour milk. Do you know sour milk?
Sour milk, MILK.
Yes. Fermented,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. Okay, sour milk. Okay, and canola.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, are those good for health? That is number one. Number two is that
Yeah.
you
Okay.
mentioned the story of wheat to say that is now GMO. So what can we use in the place of wheat? Because most breads that we have, they are made out of wheat. And then
Sure.
lastly,
Okay.
yeah, the last one is that the turmeric, if I add turmeric to cooked vegetables, is that good for reducing inflammation in cooked vegetables? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, that would be fine to cook them with the vegetables. Yeah, no problem there. As far as what you can use instead of wheat, um, you know, I'm not sure what grows prolifically in Africa as far as grains go, but if you have things like barley or rye or spelt or soy flour or quinoa, those are some excellent choices. Yeah, so anything that now in cooking, it may be a little bit different. Sometimes we mention things over here that are a little bit different than overseas. So I'm not sure how they're growing over there. They may be doing it more naturally as far as the wheat production goes. But if they are genetically modified, then it's going to cause gastrointestinal problems, especially in the stomach, the intestines, the pancreas, and the bowel, sometimes even the liver. As far as oil, you mentioned canola oil. I'm not a big fan of canola oil. Canola oil or comes from rapeseed, and rapeseed is very toxic. So, in order to make it non-toxic, which is what they use out of industrial oil, they make it from rapeseed. They have to extract the erucic acid from it in order to not have complications on the heart. So, in my mind, if you have to extract a chemical to make it non-toxic, it basically tells me that we shouldn't have it in the first place. So I don't recommend canola oil. Plus, canola oil, at least in the United States and much of the world, is genetically modified. As far as sour milk goes, um, I'm not a big fan of milk, period. But especially sour milk, yes, it's basically got microorganisms in there, and it's going to be hard to digest, and it's very mucus forming. So I wouldn't recommend that either. Sorry. But if it's the only thing you have for survival, then that's probably a different story. But as far as health-wise, it's not the best for you. So, but thank you for those questions, and I appreciate hearing from.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much. We have a question in the chat. Someone is asking, is kefir good to use? Is sourdough bread good to use?
Oh boy, I'm going into dangerous territory here. All right. Well, I know there's some popular speakers that are very much behind sourdough. I would just say this: read what Ellen White says about sour bread. Okay, and I think that should settle the question. Okay. All right. Next question.
Someone wants to know how to clear up sinus quickly.
How to clear up sinus. Okay, so okay, so as far as sinus goes, there's a very quick mechanical way to help the sinus. Under the cheekbone here, okay, you can actually push in and push up, and it will drain the sinus. Now, you can also use eucalyptus oil. Eucalyptus oil is one of the best oils to help with the sinus. And you just use the essential oil, use about 3 or 4 drops in a basin of hot, steamy water. Put a towel over your head and cover the basin of water and breathe that in. That clears the sinus like nothing else. Also using ginger, because ginger is a diaphoretic herb, it helps make you sweat, and it's also very good for circulation. And so often when you get congestion, that's when you get mucus, when your sinuses start to congest. So using things that move the blood will also help with mucus in the sinuses. Another thing you can do is basically do a sinus cleanse where you put some saline solution up the nose. All right, and you squirt it up the nose. It will run down the back of your throat. And if there's bacteria in there, it will actually pull out the water out of bacteria, kill the bacteria. And then you have to, of course, blow your nose. Okay, you may have to do that 2 or 3 times. Yeah, so I mean, there are all kinds of other things, causing sinus issues. It could be too much sugar, it could be dairy products. Some people have septum deviations that make it hard to breathe. Some people have polyps that can be a factor there. But usually it's dietary related and anything that's sort of mucus forming. But I would say doing those things I mentioned should clear it up fairly quickly. You could also do hot and cold fermentation to the nose. Okay, 2 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold. Do that 4 changes, and that should drain the sinus as well.
Thank you so much. Sister Bethel, you could unmute and ask your question. Okay, I guess she has a change of heart. Sister Karen, please unmute and ask your question.
Yes, good afternoon or good evening, whatever, I'm not sure. But I went to do a blood test, sometimes I think in 2021 thereabout, and I was told that I have an autoimmune disease by the name of JO1 antibodies. But they don't tell me what it is. They just say that I have a lot of antibodies in my body. So I don't know.
Okay. Did you say G1? Did you say G1?
JO1 antibodies.
Joe.
It's JO/1 antibodies.
JO/1 antibodies. Okay.
Yes.
So Okay, so they didn't give you a specific condition.
No, they didn't.
Okay, all right. Are you having any symptoms?
Yeah, a lot.
Okay.
Weakness, pain, can't sleep, appetite, a lot of things I have to stop eat. It's against me.
Okay.
A lot of stuff, a lot.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the Joe one. You know, allergies.
It's inflammation
But
that's associated with myopathies.
okay,
Oh.
okay, myopathies. Okay,
Mhm.
so yeah, so if you're having some symptoms that can you list them again? Just list them once
I
once
have
again for me.
pain,
Okay.
headaches,
Headache, okay.
dizziness.
Dizziness.
Sometimes I'm just weak. Sometimes my body just get weak. I can't do anything at all.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you have high inflammation in the body?
Well, that's what
did
they
they
said. I
do
have a
did
lot
they
of
do a
inflammation.
did they do a SED test? Sedition test?
No, they didn't. They just do that one and says that I have a lot of
Uh-huh.
antibodies in my body. They didn't give me anything else.
They didn't recommend any antihistamines or anything.
No, they didn't. They didn't, sir. They didn't.
I'm surprised they didn't recommend a medication for you. Whereabouts are you living?
I'm living in Jamaica.
In Jamaica. And they
Yes.
didn't give any suggestions.
No, they only tell me that there is no cure for it. It can only be controlled. But what I do, I like watch health programs, and I saw where they said persons with autoimmune should stay off flesh meats and sugary stuff,
Yeah.
and like go in the sun and stay away from stress. So that is
Yeah.
what I do, but I'm not taking any medication to say this one or that one. I'm just living like a normal person, so to speak, then without nothing but prayer and asking God for help. That's it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Have you tried some of the botanicals to help
No,
with the pain and inflammation? So you
no,
could
I haven't.
try turmeric's good for both pain and inflammation. You could try that. If
Okay.
you got headaches, then that's because you have dilation in certain blood vessels and constriction in other blood vessels, and that puts pressure on the vasculature and that causes pain. So if you dilate the blood vessels or you constrict all the blood vessels, you can achieve equalization of pressure and reduce your headaches. So I would recommend a feverfew is one of the best things for headaches or migraines. It's an excellent vasodilator as well,
Okay.
and it's considered the number one choice for that. You may also want to use some ginger just to help with the circulation. Often we get pain, especially in certain areas of our body, because they're trapped. These pain chemicals can get trapped in these thoroughfare channels, these small capillary beds, and they need to be allowed to get out. And so uh, when you get poor circulation, they don't have anywhere to go. So using exercise, using hydrotherapy, using things that require sweating, and if you've got an area that's, let's say your joints are in pain, using hot and cold over that localized area can
Okay.
open up those channels and allow those inflammatory particles to escape.
Okay.
And if we were to dilute all the pain chemicals in our body and just have them throughout the whole body in a equal distribution, then we wouldn't feel much pain. It's because they coalesce in certain areas. That's when we feel the pain.
Oh,
So just helping with circulation is going to help with pain.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You may want
Before
to reach out to me individually, because I have to ask a lot more questions, and I don't want to put you on the spot. But if you want to, you can reach out and we can talk about this further. Yeah.
What do I do?
Oh, if you want to, reach out to me, I'll put my email in the chat here,
Okay.
and because there may be other questions. When I do help someone with assessment, I have 100, 200 questions to ask them before I can even give advice sometimes. So
All right.
I put my email address there if
Thank you.
you
Thank
want to
you
reach
so
out.
much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome, Sister Karen.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to make the same suggestion because there are some other questions that
Yeah,
need to follow up. Yes.
All right.
So,
Thank you.
you're
thank
welcome.
you so much.
Okay.
We have a question here in the chat. I'm having shoulder joint pain for a few weeks, pain in the sole of my left foot for 3 days. And I woke up this morning with severe chest pain left side. Could this be an autoimmune condition? Now, I would
Yeah,
say
I would go and
see the doctor.
I was just gonna say I would check that out, especially if you're having some chest pain, and especially if it's radiating on the left side. You want to check that out for sure. Yeah, so go and see your doctor about that. Pain in the shoulder, and she said on the feet as well. Is that right?
Hmm? Shoulder joint pain, the
Or
left
shoulder
foot
joint pain. Does she have arthritis?
was mentioned.
As I mentioned. Okay. Yeah, I can't diagnose over internet.
Right, that
Okay, so
person needs to see the
yeah,
doctor to know exactly what's going on.
yeah, I would go and see a doctor, and once you know what it is, you can reach out to me. We send people to get labs done and diagnosis done all the time, so I can only help you once I know what I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We have another question here. I have an SDA friend who is taking prednisone to control his rheumatoid arthritis. What's the danger of this?
With prednisone, well, long term, it can have problems. I mean, prednisone, it does work. It does reduce the inflammation temporarily, but the problem is that long term, it can exacerbate things. It can cause more believe it or not, more autoimmune problems, and it can also create problems with the liver as well. It could lead to other issues. It could affect the lungs. It could cause you dizziness. There's many possible symptoms of that. But yeah, if look, any of you out there who are taking medication, you need to know what are the side effects. Every medication has a side effect. And in fact, there's no drug that is approved that doesn't have a side effect, because drugs by nature are foreign to the body and poisonous in nature. And they never cure disease. What they do is they change the form and location of that disease. So that's when the Bible, it relates drug use to sorceries, because a sorcerer gives the illusion that it's working, but he's deceived you in thinking that the problem is disappeared. All right, but it's put it somewhere else. So there are rare situations where, surgeries and accidents where you may need certain chemicals to help. But for the most part, they do more damage than good. And for chronic disease, certainly they do more harm than good. And so I always tell people, that we need to be educated, otherwise we're going to be medicated. All right. And God never says my people perish from lack of medication. It's lack of education. So just be aware and don't try to do shortcuts, because shortcuts end up, you pay a price down the road. Yeah, so something may appear to work, but doesn't mean it did work. It means that it's given the perception that it's worked. It's like pain meds. You take a pain med and the pain goes away, and you think, well, it's done its job. It's helped my pain. Well, all it did was it basically decreased your sensitivity to pain.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it did. It didn't lessen the pain. It just lessened your perception of pain. And so the next time you're going to need more pain meds to get the same effect. And so I learned this from a pain doctor. He said that if you, all possible, don't get on a pain med, because it's a trip to Jericho. It's downhill. And the more you have it, the more you need it. And you get to a point your body can't use the same amount of that drug. It has to have a stronger medication. And then your liver goes and your kidneys go, and then that's the end.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as possible, use the things that are going to have less symptoms and more long-term lasting results. Do you know, in the time of Dr. Kellogg, they were doing major surgeries with no anesthesia? Or should I say no drug anesthesia? They were using ice. Yeah, they were using ice. They were deadening nerves with ice. And he had the highest success rate. And that knowledge has gone. We could have been at the head, and now we're at the tail. So
Was it
so
you
yes.
that had the infection in the leg that they needed to remove, and they didn't have no anesthesia back then, and they used garlic? So there are so many things,
Yes.
We have
Yeah.
another question here. What is
Okay.
the best way to space out your herbal supplements and teas to avoid interactions?
Well, the good news is there's very few herbs that have herb interactions. There are plenty of herb drug interactions. There's 46 categories of herb drug interactions. But as far as spacing out herb, I mean, it's like you're asking me how do we space out our food? So I didn't worry so much about that. Because your body will, unless you're having large amounts of, say, thinners, or there are a few rare cases where a herb may react with another herb. It's extremely rare. I don't even talk about it because it's so rare. So I didn't worry about that. I would just say a lot of people, they forget about taking their herbs, and so sometimes it's better to take them all in one go, because if you need to take them 3 times a day and you're taking them once a day, you may not be getting the effects that you need. So I would say if you've got several herbs that you want to take, and you are disciplined and you have a good memory, then space them out equally, throughout the day. Just don't take any stimulating herbs at night, because that can keep you awake. There's certain herbs that are for specific times of the day. So we generally use stimulating herbs in the morning, and we use relaxing herbs at night. And some herbs you can take no matter what time of the day, it's no problem. But generally, we don't see a problem with taking herbs together.
Okay, there's another question. Someone wants to know what is good for gut infection.
Gut infection. Well, one of the best things you can do for gut infection is use mucilaginous herbs, things that are slippery, that will help soothe the gastrointestinal system. Things like marshmallow root, aloe vera, slippery elm. But that's just one part of the equation. To deal with the infection, I would highly recommend taking bitter herbs because that will improve the gastric acid. And gastric acid takes out, all the bacterial infections, just like H. pylori. 50% of us have H. pylori. But why is it that it becomes a problem with certain individuals? It's because their gastric acid is low and they don't have enough sufficient acidity to keep it in check. So if you have good gastric acid, and bitter herbs have bitter alkaloids, and they stimulate the taste buds at the back of the tongue, which actually is directly connected to the vagus nerve. And that will, anytime you put something bitter in your mouth, you're going to have an abundance of saliva and you can have abundance of gastric acid. And if you've got good gastric acid, you're not going to have a infection in your stomach. It's because those microorganisms, they are protected when you have poor gastric acid. All right, so your gastric acid needs to be between 1 to 3, ideally below 2. And if it's like up in the 4s to 5, then you can have a problem. Your microorganisms are protected from the gastric acid, and they're quite happy to make their home and cause an infection. Another thing you can do is take some garlic. Garlic is excellent. If you've got a really, really stubborn infection in the gastrointestinal system, I would recommend taking some Alimed. Alimed is the strongest garlic medicinal grade concentrate on the planet. That's ALIMED. So you could try that.
Okay, so
Anyway,
in terms of time, we are at 5:30. So we are going to look to close. Those of you that still have questions, he did place his email in the chat. You could ask him those questions. And a lot of individuals are saying you should come back for part 2.
oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
I guess we will talk about that.
Yes, sure. Be happy
Okay.
to. Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. And yeah, please let us know if there's anything we can do to help you. And yeah, I was thinking maybe next time I've got a presentation that's been in the back of my mind, thinking I've got to talk about how to detox safely. Detoxing safely. A lot of people they do it the wrong way, and I just think that would be a good one for a follow-up.
Very good. We thank you so much for all the information before and during the presentation. And it was very informative and we appreciate it so much. Now, to all of you that came out, now that you've received the information, please share it with your family, share it with your friends. It's about not just getting the information and sitting on it, but to be able to go out there and to help others as well. So I hope that we will do just that and to help those around us to improve our own lives, planting some of the herbs and so on and so forth, and to make sure that we always have certain things at hand just in case we need it. He also gave the information to his store, the American Herb Shop. It's there in the chat as well, so you can go